Paranormal. That cannot be explained by scientific methods.
Told of a creature that was 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
The CIA ran secret mind control experiments.
It's a tale of a creature that's been seen by many, but believed by few.
And experts say there have been reported sightings of paranormal activity.
And there was this creature, and it ran down this hill.
They say something was flying over their house, and they have no idea what it was.
How the world's most powerful individuals are actually shape-shifting reptilians.
My scariest ghost hunting experience.
Beyond reality radio.
It's Wednesday on the West Coast and Thursday on the East Coast, and many of you are stuck somewhere in between. Welcome to Beyond Reality Radio with myself, Jason Hawes, and the always awesome J.V. Johnson.
Now, he probably already knew this. Well, I know he knew it because we scheduled him, but we're going to have a psychic on tonight.
Yeah?
We're going to be talking to a psychic.
I thought you were going to say he knew that you were awesome.
Well, he may have known that. I don't know. But yeah, Jim Byers is going to join us. We're going to talk about him being a psychic and how he got there and what he does as a psychic.
Definitely interesting on how people get there.
Yeah, it's
he's got a different kind of story though.
Yeah, it's a different path for him. It seems very unique. But we're gonna actually go right to break and bring him in quickly so we can get right to it.
All right, let's do it. You listen to Jason and JV on Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back right after this.
It's New England's best weekend of the year. It's Scaricon, the horror and pop culture fan convention, June 2nd through the 4th at the Mass Mutual Center in Springfield. Come meet and mingle with the celebrities. Sid Haig, Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Jason Hawes, Steve Gonzalez, Felissa Rose, James Duvall, and so many more. See the film premieres, including a world-exclusive premiere of the movie Death House. It's all part of your admission. And then Friday night, it's the exclusive celebrity VIP party. Saturday night, it's the Monster Party with costume contest. It's a weekend of fun for all ages. More info can be found at Scaricon.com. That's Scaricon.com. Welcome back to Beyond Reality Radio. Jason Hawes, J.V. Johnson. Thanks for joining us, whether you're listening on one of the great radio stations around the country or you're listening online. We welcome you all.
Absolutely. And make sure that you follow that list. You can check what stations we air on if you go to beyondrealityradio.com, click the Listen Live tab, because we are on stations all across the country and we're constantly adding more. So make sure you stay up to date on that. And also, if you like the Facebook.com/Beyond Reality Radio page, we're constantly listing them there as well. So.
You got a little tickle in your throat, don't you?
I do, man. It's just a sore throat. You know, those kids, they just bring home all these nasty viruses.
They bring everything home. And then this time of year, when weather's up and down, you never know what temperature's going to be. It's kind of a little harder to stay.
I know, one day it's 40. The next day it's 84. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Welcome to the Northeast. Anyway, we're going to bring in our guest tonight. We're talking with Jim Byers. He's a psychic medium. In fact, his website is Psychic Medium in PA, as in Pennsylvania.com. Jim, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. It's great to have you on the show tonight.
I appreciate it.
So, Jim, we want to get started by just getting a little bit of background about you. Tell us about yourself and how you got into this stuff.
Okay. Well, I've been doing psychic readings. I've been studying it and doing readings for about 4 years now. But I've been having experiences throughout my life. When I really started to, review myself, and I saw that over time I was having experiences, every couple of days or every couple of weeks. And, early on I thought, well, this is just a coincidence.
Well, when you say experiences, what type of experiences are we talking about?
Well, once in a while I'd have I don't know if I want to say like a prophetic dream. I would see the future a little bit. Sometimes I would have dreams where I'm communicating with members of my family that have passed away. And, also, just like lucid dreams.
Okay. So mainly you're seeing this through dreaming?
Yeah, seeing that through dreaming. And, even when I was younger, I kind of had this feeling about myself that there was just something about me. Like I go to a kid's party and I just couldn't handle it. There's too much energy going on. And, my mom would drop me off, and then 20 minutes later I'm calling her to come pick me up because there's just too much going on there. And at, the age of 7 or 8, I just thought it was nerves, but now that I do this work, I see that it was just too much energy going on.
So even as a child, you were picking up on this energy. You were sensitive to it, and it was actually I'm not going to necessarily use the word, but I'll say destructive. It was interfering with your routine. You actually felt the energy, and it was becoming a bit of a problem for you at the time.
Yeah, I guess you could use the term empath, and I never thought I was. There's a lot of terms in this field that people, clairvoyant, psychic medium, channelers, and I never thought that I was empathic, but within the past couple of months, I've just come to that realization, like I said, when I look back at my life. And people like to use the term psychic vampire, and I think people kind of like that term because it's cool and it's hip, but I really don't believe in that term. I think it's more about absorbing people's energy more than someone taking it from you. And I think that's what was going on, is that I was taking in people's energy. And even at a young age, I felt that I could read people, that I kind of knew their backstory and I knew who they were. So this has been going on my whole life. It just took, it's funny, getting divorced for this to come through, because at that point, my whole life, turned upside down, and I was trying to figure out my way in life. And, I was seeing somebody at the time, and she was like, I'm going to take you to the psychic I know, and hopefully she can help you proceed through this. And, I went up there, and she's doing the reading, and she has her hands over my leg, and I could see this, magenta stream of energy going from her hand to my leg. And she's just sitting there, and she says, you need to start doing this. And I said, well, what? She said, doing readings. You need to create a website. You need to start doing readings for people to, help them as much as I'm helping you. And I was like, sure. So, you guys around my age, 10, 20 years ago, you couldn't flip open a phone book and look for a psychic mentor. Now it's, you can go on the internet and you can find places, and that's what I did. I found some places around me, in particular Inner Peace, which is close to me here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and started taking some development classes, and it kind of just went from there. And, the development classes are good, but there's a point when you have to start practicing it. And I just kind of jumped into it, and I've been doing readings ever since. And I'm continually taking workshops and classes to get better at this.
Yeah, so you this really started for you, other than, not the sensitivities, but your idea of using those sensitivities started with a visit to a different psychic who picked up on your abilities and your gifts and recommended at that point that you start using them yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I do have people, they use the word gift, and to me, I appreciate the compliment, but I really think that we're all born with this. It's just the difference is, to what level we pursue this. If even you guys yourself, if you look back at your lives, you've had experiences, and it's because you're open. Everybody's open. It's just to what extent.
Well, and
some people ignore it.
And I'm a firm believer of that, and we talk about that often on this show, where children, of course, are more open than adults. They're able to see and hear things that adults are not, mainly because to a child, anything's possible. They haven't been conditioned on what's real and what's not yet. A big fat guy brings gifts down a chimney. A big bunny brings them candy. So they're wide open, and it's not until we start telling them that their invisible friend isn't real and all these other things that we close them off. We condition them to our belief system, and that in return closes them off.
Yeah, you're right. And another thing, too, is, if you think about a child's life and an adult's life, children don't have bills. They don't get, they don't get into relationships. They don't have work. All these things, take our focus off of those things. And if you want to say interrupt things or just take our attention off of it, and therefore, we start to walk away from being open and have to deal with these adult situations, if you want to say. So we kind of lose that because, I've heard several people say when I take these classes that, some people start coming back to mediumship and being psychic as they get older, because once you hit your 30s or 40s, a lot of the things that you have to do in life have calmed down. You've gone to college or started the job and you're steadying your career. The kids are getting a little bit older, and now you have more time to focus on that.
Yeah, and how long ago did this meeting with the psychic happen that turned your life around a little bit?
That was about 2014, and that was someone up in Johnson City, New York. So, I'm very grateful for that meeting, and, I've seen her a couple of times since then, but, I tried to go to different places because there's all different kind of philosophies and different techniques that people use and teach. So, I try to go, as much as money and time allows to different workshops as close to me as possible.
Well, and where did it go from you being told this to you learning how to actually help people out there? Because there's a big leap when you go and a sensitive or whatever tells you. I hate the word psychic because I always feel like a 900 numbers attached to it. Yeah. But there's a big leap from when you go to a sensitive or so-called sensitive, and they tell you that you have this ability, and then you find yourself helping people. There's a big transition there, and there's a huge learning curve of how are you going to help people? What are you going to be able to do for them? How are you going to be able to pick these things up? So where did you learn to pretty much the way of helping other individuals instead of just picking up things for yourself?
Yeah, well, when I left that psychic, she's also a healer. She does a lot of things. And, I'm driving home, and one of my fingers starts burning. And the finger that starts burning would be the ring finger, where my ring would have been, being married and everything. And it's just a big weight off my shoulder, and I came home. And just all these things just started to fall into place. Like I said, I did that life review, and I'm like, wow, this has been happening my whole life. And I feel like this floodgate was open, and just all this information started to come to me, information about myself, if you want to say information about the universe, and just, I got in contact with my guides. I took a workshop on how to get in contact with my guides, and that was really crucial because, we have all different guides for different aspects of our lives. And the first guide I met up with was my teacher guide, and she really helped me and encouraged me to keep studying and also start practicing. And the good thing is about these workshops is, there is kind of standards for this. Like I said, everybody has these abilities, but there's a way to do a reading. You have to, be conscious what words you use sometimes. And, there's a certain flow to a reading, and those are the things that I learned in these workshops. And, a lot of it has to do with meditation, too. People come to see me, and I can pick up on when, people have stronger abilities. And, I definitely offer to help as much as I can. I never claim to be a guru or an expert, but if I can save people the money and time that I invest to get them started, I'm more than happy to do that. But, meditation is, to me, a big part of it. And I have to admit, I try to do it as much as I can, but it's very, very helpful because you get to reach that level where you're calm and all the, pressures of life, the daily life are away, and you can concentrate on yourself, and you ask, what do you need to teach me? What do I need to learn? And that's when I start to receive information on myself and how to get better at this.
So before you had this experience with the psychic yourself, which made you decide to pursue this, prior to that, did you have an opinion of psychics or the field or any of that? Did you ever give it any thought prior to that?
I always had an interest, and like I said, I always felt that there was something about myself. I just didn't know what it was. And I'd say about 2006, my grandmother had passed away, and I wanted to make contact. So I went to a psychic, too, and it was funny because what happened in that reading happens sometimes in my readings, too. I wanted to contact my grandmother. I get in contact with my grandfather, and, I'm glad he came through, too. So I've gone to psychics, and I see how they work, and sometimes they're helpful. I think sometimes you can tell the difference between someone who, definitely takes this serious and practices and learns as much as they can, and then someone who kind of has a template. And that's what I noticed over time. I went to this one psychic almost every year, like a yearly doctor checkup, and she was kind of telling me the same things. And I needed more out of that. And I would ask her, where can I learn more about this? And she would refer me to books, which is helpful. But, for me, even when I was in college, I need to be sitting in front of someone and interacting and having one-on-one time with someone. With a book, sometimes you're left with questions and you don't know where to get those answers. So, it's transitioning from being a client to, being the reader.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I know what I went to psychics for. I remember being the client, and when people come to see me, I want to give them as much as I can because I used to be them.
Now, when you go to workshops and seminars and these sessions, how much of this stuff can actually be taught versus how much of it has to be innate? I mean, I'm always a little skeptical about teaching somebody how to do this stuff versus it being, just part of their natural makeup. And where's that line?
Well, one thing with the classes is a lot of it's about confidence. Even as I do these readings, sometimes I still question it. For one, I can't believe that this is possible. And the other thing is, sometimes you get information and you're like, is this right? This doesn't make any sense. And sometimes I've held on to information, and 15 minutes later in the reading, the client mentions what I had received a while ago. And to me at that point, I can't present that to them because it's old information. And I'd really just be repeating what they said. So, a lot of it's the confidence having in yourself. And another part of it is realizing the different ways in which we receive information. Some people just know the information. Some people see the information. And for me, I'm a big seer. Through my third eye, I receive a lot of information that way. I can see people who are living, people who have passed, and I can see the clients themselves, and I can see them in different stages of their lives, if it's necessary, if there's a story there, if there's a message that needs to get through. Some people get sensations in their body. I do as well. Some people taste and smell. I taste and smell once in a while. Usually that's, maybe someone's cooking. Usually when I taste, that has to do with addiction. And, I get that once in a while. But usually when I taste, I can taste the alcohol. So there's all these different ways to receive information, and learning how to bring in that information and also how to kind of decipher it. I mean, you really shouldn't, as a reader, you really shouldn't be, analyzing the information so much. It should be just receiving it and then passing it on. But sometimes we receive information in symbols. Like one easy one is a birthday cake. For me, when I see a birthday cake, that means that someone either recently had a birthday or it's coming soon. Like for me, I don't really forecast the next 20, 30 years of someone's life. For me, it's, within the near future. And that's the thing I like to tell people too when I do readings is that, I'm not going to outline the next 20, 30 years of your life, and there's such a thing as free will. I can tell you X, Y, and Z, whether it's about a job or a relationship, and then they walk out of here and take another route. Well, it's not going to manifest. And there's also things that we need to do, people we need to meet, places we need to go in order for those things to manifest. So, I can do so much in reading, but some of it's up to the person themselves.
Well, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, more.
Hey, Beyond Reality Radio friends. As you know, most of the guests featured on Beyond Reality Radio have books and other interesting offerings for our listeners. And now we've made it even easier for you to get a hold of them. Just visit the Beyond Reality Radio webpage at beyondrealityradio.com and click on the Guest tab in the menu header. From there, you'll see recent Beyond Reality Radio guests with a short bio and some of the things they're offering our Beyond Reality Radio listeners. Click on whatever you're interested in, and you can order straight from there. It couldn't be easier. That's beyondrealityradio.com. Click on the Guest tab in the menu, and then simply sit back and enjoy Beyond Reality Radio. Don't forget, that's beyondrealityradio.com. Just click on the Guest menu heading, and then you'll find what you want. And thanks for listening to Beyond Reality Radio. the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Jason and JV, thanks for joining us. Our guest tonight is Psychic Medium Jim Byers. His website is psychicmediuminpa, as in Pennsylvania.com. And we're talking about basically how you got started, Jim, and when you first started recognizing your abilities and how you use them to help people. One of the questions I've always had is when people come to you and look for guidance, I'm assuming that a lot of people come looking for some type of comfort or resolution, closure from a grief situation, lost loved one. Is that a good portion of your work?
It's a little bit of both. When it comes to the guidance part, I had somebody come, and their reading wasn't going so well, and it came to a point in the reading where they mentioned, well, I'm really here for information about a lawsuit. And for me, the whole reason I do this is to help people. Money and relationships to me are secondary because there's things that we need to do in life in order to prepare for those relationships or those opportunities for money to come. Nothing comes to your front door. A guy or a girl doesn't come knock on your front door and say, hey, let's date. Or, someone doesn't show up at your door with a check. There's certain things that we need to do. And those are the kind of things that that's the information that I get, and that's the information that I pass on. That sometimes people have things in their past relationships or past situations that traumatize them, and they're holding on to it, and they need to work through that. And sometimes it does take someone out of your circle of friends or your circle of family for someone to realize that, okay, it's not my mom's on my back telling me about this. Someone else is telling me about it. Maybe it's time that I start to address that. And, sometimes the information I get is also, in what ways to address that. Sometimes people they need to start to speak up for themselves and defend themselves, let their thoughts and feelings be known. And that's when I'll see the color light blue, which is related to the throat chakra, which means that they're having issues with their communication.
Okay.
Sometimes, like you had mentioned about past relationships, people are still holding on to that. And that's when I'll see, an emerald green color, which is related to the heart chakra, which means they're still having, love troubles, and they need to cut that etheric cord from that relationship and move forward. Sometimes in readings, I'll also get information about past lives. And, that's in relation to that, maybe a former life, they were someone who didn't speak up for themselves. They were someone who was physically or emotionally abused. And if we don't address something in a past life and conquer it, you're just going to repeat it until you finally address it. And, and that's what I'll tell people, is now is the time for you to step up and address these issues that you've been dealing with in this life and in the past.
Now, is this one of those things where you can give readings over the phone, or do you need the person in front of you, or how does that work for you?
I prefer people in person because I feed off of that energy. To be honest, I've never done a phone reading because for me, just like how you mentioned before about the whole thing about the word psychic, I have the same kind of feelings related to phone readings because the whole Miss Cleo thing, I really think there's a taboo with that. I offer email readings, and with my email readings, what I do is I'll meditate on someone's name and then take notes and then, translate those notes. Sometimes I draw during my readings as well. I can draw people, the client themselves, or I can draw a spirit that's related to them in some way, or I draw, a place or an object that's related to them. So I'll transcribe that. I'll scan up whatever photos or whatever artwork I do, and then email that to them. I started doing Skype, and that's going pretty well. It's a different way to do readings, but I can still feed off of that energy. And even with the email readings, I'll concentrate on that person's name, and I'll ask my spirit guides to help me receive information, whether it's guidance or connections related to that name that need to be passed on. And that's what I do before all my readings, really, is I'll spend a good hour or so trying to get in that zone, get to that level where, all my personal stuff is kind of put to the side, and I reach a level where I'm comfortable and relaxed and calm so the information can come through. And then what I'll do is I'll concentrate on the client's name. And sometimes I get their first name, sometimes I get their full name. Sometimes I don't even get a name, and that's fine. I'll just concentrate on, who's going to meet me at 7 o'clock tonight. And that's when the information will come through about them or about the spirit associated with them. And there's been several times when I'll draw someone, the client themselves, because it's funny because they'll show up and I think to myself, wow, I just drew you about half an hour ago. Or we'll go through the reading and I'll have my notes, because I take notes and I pass them on to my clients, and I'll say, do you recognize this person? And they'll be like, wow, that's my uncle or my mother. So, I try and draw as much as I can. Sometimes it's just about the information.
Okay, gotcha.
So you had mentioned previously that one of the difficulties with telling people, what you see for their future is that, and I don't know if it's difficulty, it's actually kind of a benefit if you look at it in that way, but it allows them to actually go out and change their course, right? So you could see something happening, whether it's in days, weeks, or months, and if it's something that's, if it's not a good occurrence, or if it's something that would cause them harm, they could actually change their course, making what you saw no longer their future.
Absolutely. And, I've had several people call me back and say, thank you so much for that information. I acted on it and things are progressing. I've also had people come back and say, you had mentioned this person and, I met them and now we're dating, or this was a person who I met who helped me get a job somewhere. I've seen a lot of things during my meditations before someone gets here, and also when they are here. Unfortunately, I've seen people be murdered. I've seen people, I've seen physical fights. I've seen, sexual assaults. I've seen that, and I've also seen beautiful things. There's times when I kind of have to, fan myself a little bit with my hand and relax, because sometimes things are so beautiful and sweet that I start to feel that. And I kind of have to hold myself back from literally crying in front of someone because it feels so good.
Well, let me ask a question though. Just being the devil's advocate on what Jimmy was just saying, where sometimes you get these visions of somebody's future, and you can tell them ahead of time, about this, and they can change their course. How does, and I've always been a little confused on that. I mean, if you see a future, wouldn't you be able to see multiple futures then with different, after somebody makes a choice? Just for the fact is, if you see somebody's future and you tell them about this and they change the course, then that future never happened. So how'd you see it in the first place?
Well, for me, I really don't try to broadcast too far in advance. And, there's been times when, people will come to me and they'll say, well, how do you feel about this person? I guess it's someone they're pursuing for a relationship. And, I'll tell them whether I get a good feeling or not. And I'll tell them, it's up to you if you pursue this, but I'm letting you know that I feel negative energy towards this. I feel that this person may be deceitful or isn't a good match, or they have some kind of issue that they're not telling you about. And, that's when I have to be careful about how I present this information, because I definitely don't want someone to react in a certain way where something happens outside of here and, someone gets hurt or arrested or, anything like that. That's one of the things that I do learn in these workshops, is how to present information. And that's one of the most important things, is to make sure that you present it delicately, so people don't react a certain way, whether they're sitting in front of you or it's days or weeks later. I've had a lot of people come here who are still mourning the loss of someone, and I have to, when I see them, when I connect with these spirits, I just have to take my time and, let them know that, they're still there. That's one of the big things, that people come here and they say, do they still love me? Do they still watch over me? Do they feel okay? If they had a bad illness? And the answer is yes, and I don't have to be psychic to tell somebody that. They're always around us. They always love us. And they're most definitely feeling better, because all that physical pain is gone, because it's not physical anymore, it's spiritual. And, a lot of things are left behind when people pass on. All the emotions, the complicated relationships with some people, worrying about bills and car payments and all the jobs and everything, all that goes away. So when you go home, that's what I call it, because I'm more spiritual than religious. So for me, heaven is the universe. So when you go home, when you go to heaven, all those things are left down here on earth. So they're most definitely happy, and they do watch over us. It's about us being open enough to receive those messages, whether it's a whisper or it's smelling a perfume, or, there's also synchronicity where we come across someone's, we're thinking about someone, we come across their photo, or we hear a song on the radio that reminds us of that person. Sometimes, I've had a couple clients where they're so deep in mourning and they want to be visited by a family member who's passed away, but that family member is not going to visit because they know that their presence is just upsetting them more. So that person needs to work through that mourning in order to, start getting messages, because they know, they can sense their visits just make things worse.
We're talking with Jim Byers. He's a psychic medium. His website is psychicmediuminpa, as in Pennsylvania.com. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want Jim to tell us the story about his grandfather and a special relationship he's had with his grandfather, and how it resulted in a book by the name of My American Odyssey. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Jason and JV, don't go away. It's New England's best weekend of the year. It's Scaricon, the horror and pop culture fan convention, June 2nd through the 4th at the Mass Mutual Center in Springfield. Come meet and mingle with the celebrities: Sid Haig, Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Jason Hawes, Steve Gonzalez, Felissa Rose, James Duvall, and so many more. See the film premieres, including a world-exclusive premiere of the movie Death House. It's all part of your admission. And then Friday night's the exclusive celebrity VIP party. Saturday night, it's the Monster Party with costume contest. It's a weekend of fun for all ages. More info can be found at Scaricon.com. That's Scaricon.com. Hey,
welcome back to Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV, and we're talking with Jim Byers, psychic medium located in Pennsylvania. So let's get back to it.
Yeah, hey, Jim, before we went to break, I mentioned the fact that you had a particularly unique circumstance and relationship with your grandfather. Why don't you tell us that story?
Okay. Well, I was home from college, I guess it was Easter break in 99, and when I was in college, I'd come and stay with my grandmother. So she had actually become ill during that time period, and she was in the hospital. So, I was there by myself, and my mom stopped by to pick up a couple things to take to my gran. And she said, well, hey, here's your grandfather's World War II diary. Why don't you read it? Maybe you can do something with it. Because I was a communications major at Bloomsburg University, studying journalism. So I was like, yeah, sure. So I took it off her, and I read it. I'm like, this isn't so bad. And what he did was he had written and typed up notes on his stateside training for going overseas. So I read that, and I was like, there's got to be more to this. So luckily my grandmother wasn't there, because I ripped her apartment apart. Every closet, every drawer, and I couldn't find much. And there was one drawer left, and I opened that up, and I found these two little notebooks. And I started to read them. I'm like, wow, this is his notes picking up basically where the basic training notes left off. And so I started to read it, and I came across this one line where it said, I felt scared when we first started out, but I was okay after 100 yards. And, I read that line a couple times, and just out of nowhere, I felt like I was in his place. I could hear my heavy breaths, my nervous breaths. I could hear the crunching of rocks under, soldiers' boots. I could hear the grass going back and forth as people walk through them. And I just felt very nervous, very anxious, and I'd never experienced anything like that before. And that went on for a minute or two, and the next thing I know, I kind of was pulled out of it because the notebook I was reading dropped to the ground. And I kind of just sat there for a second, like, what just happened? And I just, still feeling anxious, still feeling nervous, I just had to get up and start walking around, and, I was breathing heavy, and I started to get teary-eyed and everything. And I figured out that, I just pretty much just relived a moment in my grandfather's life. And I think the term for that is recognition. And, once I, walk through that whole thing, I'm like, wow, I really need to do something. I need to pull this all together. I need to tell his story. Because what happened with my grandfather is he passed away in 1958 from polio. And, he was 44 years old. And, at that point in time, they did have a cure for it, and it was mainly a child's disease. And he was 44. So, I can only presume that, he was a Boy Scout troop leader. I don't know if maybe he got it that way, or his father was in a nursing home with cancer. I don't know if maybe he picked it up during a visit. I can't really sit here and figure that out, but somehow he got it, and he had incurred injuries while he was in the war, back injuries, and back pain and fatigue is some of the symptoms of polio. So his doctor came and visited him at home, and when doctors still did that, and he just said that he had the grip, flu-like symptoms. So they just thought he was sick, but it was really the polio starting to really kick in. And within a week, he had passed away. They found out after, before, at a time when they couldn't do anything, they found out that it was polio. They did an emergency tracheotomy on him, and he passed away within an hour or two of that. He lost all, ability to move and swallow and breathing, and everything. It just kicked in really fast because it had been misdiagnosed for a while. So, he dies in 1958, and, he had, at that point, he had started working on some of that story. For him at that point, I guess it was just a story, but the way that he was writing it was that he intended other people to read this. And, once I started to read the other notes that he had kept in the war, that's, like I said, I got to do something with this. So then, that's when I had to start researching things, and this is trying to get a hold of any family members or friends or people that he served with, and, this is 99, 2000, and, years following that, too, and, as you guys know, every day more and more World War II veterans pass away, so it was harder and harder for me to find people to contact to learn more about my grandfather. So, luckily, he had a couple things he left behind, which I was able to use. Because there was a fire at the National Archives in Missouri and wiped out thousands of records, which included his. We had a flood here in Pennsylvania in 1972, and I imagine material was lost then. So, those were some of the obstacles that I couldn't do anything about. I just had to move forward. So it was a lot of letters here and there to different agencies and just collecting information as much as I could. But as I wrote this, I did feel that I was being guided. There were times when I'd be writing it, and I would, again, get one of those moments where I'm reliving it. And I would feel those emotions again, which I'm glad I did because it helped me write the book better. And that's the thing, too, is that I tried not to edit the book too much because I wanted his words saved and his words used. So, there's times in my life when I question, why was I a communications major? There's not a lot of money in being a newspaper reporter. But learning those skills, how to write, how to edit, how to design, helped me finish this book. If I was any other profession, I don't know if I would have had the knowledge to do that. So, it's one of those synchronicity karma kind of things where I pursued that field, and it helped me finish this book.
Wow, what a journey. I mean, that's really incredible. And I just have to say from personal experience, we're going to have to go to break here, but,
sure.
I've just been fascinated by the stories of the men and women who fought in World War II and what they sacrificed and the things they did. And I know every soldier and every war is equally, should be equally honored. But, the men and women that went into World War II and gave up everything and for 5 years or so left their families and stormed beaches and, stormed bunkers. And they're unbelievable stories to me, and it was probably very therapeutic for you to go through this process. But we're going to take a break. We're talking with psychic medium Jim Byers, and we've got a whole bunch more, Jay. We're going to keep talking about this stuff.
Absolutely. So if you haven't yet, head over to facebook.com/Beyond Reality Radio. Make sure you like the Facebook page, and then head to beyondrealityradio.com. You can download the free app for Android or iPhone right there. It allows you to listen to the show live, catch past episodes, chat, do all that stuff totally free. All right, we're going to take a quick break. More to come. You listen to Jason and JV, Beyond Reality Radio. It's Wednesday on the West Coast, Thursday on the East Coast, and many of you are stuck somewhere in between. Welcome to Beyond Reality Radio with myself, Jason Hawes, and JV Johnson.
Hey, it's great to continue to see the list of radio stations carrying the program growing across the country. The family of BRR affiliates is getting longer and bigger, and we're really happy to see that. All right, so let's see. What do we have going on here? We should mention that we've got SCARACON coming up, Jay. That is just, days away, basically.
Yeah, this is going to be great. It's in Springfield, Massachusetts. Make sure you come down. Steve and I are going to be there. Kane Hodder, who was Jason Friday the 13th. Tony Todd, is going to be there. And awesome. Well, then head over to scaricon.com for more information and check it out. I look forward to seeing a lot of you.
And one more thing that I just think is the coolest thing ever. The most anticipated horror film probably in 25 years is coming out this fall. It's called Death House. It stars everybody who's anybody in the horror acting community, and it was written by Gunnar Hansen, who passed away recently. This thing has been anticipated for a couple years now. We are going to show the first screening of it ever. The first time it's ever been seen publicly. It's a special private screening at Scaricon for Scaricon attendees. It'll be the Saturday night of Scaricon.
And Gunnar Hansen was Leatherface.
Yeah,
right?
He was Leatherface in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's right. Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. So awesome. Well, yeah, it's going to be a great time, and make sure you all check it out if you can. All right, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, more with our guests. You're listening to Jason and JV on Beyond Reality Radio.
It's New England's best weekend of the year. It's Scaricon, the horror and pop culture fan convention, June 2nd through the 4th at the Mass Mutual Center in Springfield. Come meet and mingle with the celebrities. Sid Haig, Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Jason Hawes, Steve Gonzalez, Felissa Rose, James Duvall, and so many more. See the film premieres, including a world-exclusive premiere of the movie Death House. It's all part of your admission. And then Friday night, it's the exclusive celebrity VIP party. Saturday night, it's the Monster Party with costume contest. It's a weekend of fun for all ages. More info can be found at Scaricon.com. That's Scaricon.com. Beyond Reality Radio, Jason and JV, thanks so much for everybody for joining us, everybody in the chat room. We love seeing all of you participating in the show. Thanks for the emails, too. We get a lot of great suggestions for guests and ideas for the show, and we appreciate that input.
Yeah, they're coming in left and right with guest requests and just ideas, even people contacting us to be on the show. We greatly appreciate that. And the nice thing is, too, I'm getting a lot from the app lately as well as recommendations.
Yeah,
so.
that app makes it really, really easy for people to communicate with us, which is what we like. What happened to my tongue there? We're going to be talking with Jim Byers. He's a psychic medium. He's in Pennsylvania. In fact, his website is Psychic Medium in PA, as in Pennsylvania.com. And we were talking about his book, My American Odyssey, which chronicles his grandfather's experience. And the unique thing about that particular effort for you, Jim, is the fact that you really feel like your grandfather, who died in 1958, guided you through the process of writing the book about his story.
Absolutely. You know, there are certain times when I would come up against, writer's block. Or, where do I go from here? And that's when, I'd have these kind of epiphanies where it's like, well, you need to contact this agency because they would have this information. Or, you got to try and find this person that I served with. And it was helpful. And I do have to say, as I started to work on this book, I was sitting there and, with my mother and with my grandmother, and we're talking about it. And, my grandmother gets up, gets the mail, and she comes back with this package, and she says it's from Arizona, and she opens it up, and it's a whole bunch of letters and a couple pictures. And what it was someone my grandfather had met during the war had resent these things to us. Back during World War II, they used trains and boats and other civilian ways to transport soldiers. And my grandfather was on the way back from a furlough from California, Arizona to Pennsylvania. And he had met a young woman and her daughter, and they became friends on the train. And they stayed in contact for the remainder of his life. And they stayed in contact with my grandmother as well. My mother is actually named after the woman's daughter, Janet. And what had happened is Janet's mother had passed away out in Arizona. She's going through some of her things, and she comes across my grandfather's letters that he had sent, and some photos and some other things, and she sent them back to us, which really helped with the book because, usually when you see someone's letters, it's usually the receiving end. Well, I got to see the sending end. I got to see what my grandfather sent to other people, and I got to see the way that the differences in his attitude towards the war, because sometimes when we go into war, everybody's gung-ho and patriotic when you start off because of the mission. And with World War II, I don't know if there's a better mission, which is basically to save humanity, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
And so he starts off that way, and then as the years progress, he's been out, like you had said before, 5 years. And he was there for a while, and he just wanted to come home. He just wanted to do what he had to do and come home because he's envisioning these things that he wants to do with himself. You know, when he started in the war, he was in his late 20s, almost 30. You know, he had originally volunteered to serve, but because of his age, I think they made him like a 1B classification or something. They put him off to the side. But after Pearl Harbor, they wanted everybody, you know. So he was older, and you know you get to see from that perspective too, as you read it, is, you know, being an older person versus, you know, someone 18, 19 years old, and there's a different energy level there, and I think it's amazing too when you think about guys that were lying when they were like 14, 15 years old, lying to get into the service, which is very commendable. And so, you know, I have these letters, and I was able to incorporate them into the book too. And you know, I'm very grateful that Janet had done that, because I wouldn't have the personable, as much as a personable side.
Yeah, that's
those letters.
That's a real treasure that you were able to get a hold of those. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, for everybody out there, you can go to 337thinfantry.com, and you can look up My American Odyssey, the book that we're actually talking about.
So, Jim, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's available on Amazon and Kindle, and I have to say that, you know, really what started, you know, I had written this book a couple of years ago and did like a short run print, passed it out to some friends and family, sold a couple copies, but with this Amazon possibility where you can publish your books through there at no cost, you know, and, you know, they take a percentage, you take a percentage, like that's what really opened this up for me. You know, and, you know, I'm very glad that Amazon does that, and I think it allows people like myself, you know, good writers who have the skill and ability to get things published that way, because, you know, for so many years, you know, you have to kind of wait and hope that a publisher accepts your work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Now you can publish it on your own.
Well, and a lot of times they won't accept a lot of the great work that really should be accepted, because the person doesn't have a base of people who automatically will buy it. A lot of times you see them, these companies only sticking it out there to people who are famous, because you know they already got a fan base, and they know that people will go out and buy, instead of, there's just tons of great indie authors and everything else out there, and it's nice to see these things opening up for all those individuals.
Jim, let's go back to some of the work that you do for your clients and the readings that you do. When you get somebody that comes in to see you who wants to reach a deceased loved one, what's the process you go through to make that connection?
Well, for one, what I do is, like I said, I meditate beforehand, before somebody comes to see me. So at that point, it's kind of whoever wants to come in, you know, you're welcome to come in. And I'll ask, you know, what's your name? You know, how did you pass? What is something about you that this person only knows? Because that's really, you know, when people come to me, and, you know, I give them a little spiel before we do the reading, and I let them know that, you know, I don't Facebook people, I don't Google people. You know, I want to give you information that's not on the internet. And when people come to see me, I tell them, when I give you information, give me a yes or no. If you need to maybe confirm something or explain something, that's fine, but don't spill your guts, because, you know, it's my job to give you information. Because depending on who you're going to, you know, they'll fish. They'll fish for answers, and then what they'll do is they'll take those answers, you know, move them around and feed it back to you. Like, wow, that was great. They totally knew that. Well, you gave them the information.
I always find it interesting when people go to a psychic and come out all happy about their experience, when all they did was hear about things they already knew. I mean, what's the value in that if they already knew it? So,
or who they supposedly were in a past life. And it's always somebody famous.
That's always something interesting too. But I want to ask you about something you just said specifically. You said you don't look for people on Google or Facebook. Are you suggesting that that's common in the industry?
I'm saying it's a possibility.
Come on! Don't be politically correct there.
I'm sorry?
I said, don't be politically correct there. It's pretty much public knowledge that a lot of so-called psychics, let alone a lot of the famous ones, will go on and research individuals long before long before they sit down and talk to the person. So
yeah, I absolutely do not. As soon as someone contacts me, whether through Facebook or through my website or over the phone, I do my best to shield them. Shield myself from learning some about them. I'll try to avoid them as much as possible because I'm just like you. Even though I do these readings, I still have a level of skepticism, and I think everybody should, because there are people who do this for ego, who do this for money. And, me and other honest psychics are always going to be battling against that for as long as we do that, because it happens. And it's sad that that happens, but it's true. I've gone to a couple psychics before I started doing this where I thought I was a bit questionable, and I thought I could have done the same kind of reading myself.
Yeah. Well, and you're always going to have people that definitely contaminate the field that you're in. JV and I investigate claims of the paranormal. I did it with the show Ghosthunters for over 12 years. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is there's been tons of shows that have come and gone that are notorious for faking things, let alone investigators out there faking things. And those people hurt all the things that the real investigators are trying to work on. So, and you get the same thing in the psychic field.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, I pride myself on being genuine and specific. And, getting back to what you're saying before about making connections, I basically let, whoever wants to come through is welcome to visit. But, sometimes, like I had mentioned about myself, I wanted to connect with I got my grandfather. Sometimes that happens during my reading. Someone wants to connect with their mother, I get their brother. And sometimes it's really, who do you need to hear from more? Are you ready to hear from your mother, or are you ready to hear from your brother? Which one would you be able to handle more, especially how we were talking about people still in mourning? If I make a connection with their mom, it makes me feel bad to watch someone cry in front of me, and I don't want that to happen. I'd rather tears of joy than tears of mourning. And if someone can't handle connecting with their mom, the brother comes through, and that may prepare them maybe for their next visit, whether it's with me or whether it's with another psychic. And you kind of have to, sometimes it's about getting used to the process and knowing how it works and preparing yourself for the next visit.
When you make these communications, one of the things that's always I've been curious about is, do you ever get information from the other side as to where they are, what they're doing, what's going on? I mean, other than just communicating with the loved one that's sitting in front of you, do you ever get information about where these spirits are?
I get information sometimes about what they're doing, because once we go home, you have a decision to come back through reincarnation or stay there and do work. And that's sometimes the information I get, is that they're doing work. They're helping other people cross over, or they're working with their guides, because there is a life review. People talk about St. Peter, the gates and all that. There is a life review. You have to learn what you did right, what you did wrong in this most recent life. What do you feel you could have done better? If you choose to go back, what are you going to do differently? So, there's that aspect of it. There's also, them coming back and helping others here on Earth as well. So I do get that. What are they doing now? And that's what they're doing. The work continues. You get a little bit time off to relax. It is a process. And that's one thing that happens, too, during my readings is, sometimes people come to me, like, very quickly after someone has passed, and there's a transition going on. So sometimes I don't make a great connection, because they're, just like trying to catch somebody in the middle of doing something. They're transitioning home, and you're trying to make contact, and you're kind of, I don't want to say holding them back, but you're kind of interrupting that, and you're trying to break into that. And that's when, sometimes I do have a little bit of a difficulty if it's a really recent passing.
Yeah.
What I've learned over time is when someone's been gone longer, I get a way stronger connection.
You had said that some of these spirits decide to help others make the passing. Now, we've had people on the show who have talked about near-death experiences, and out of body experiences, and frequently we hear stories about, while I was out of my body, all these other beings came to me and were trying to guide me in a certain direction. Is that what you're talking about?
No, not really. But to touch on the out of body experience, like that's something that was really, this situation that I had with my grandfather reading that notebook was a significant experience for me. Another one was I was on the cusp of my real first out-of-body experience. And, I had mentioned the divorce, and that's when all this kind of came together, because it was like maybe a month or two before all that went where it did, that I had this, I was laying down, it was the middle of the afternoon, I was having a nap, and I kind of became conscious in a way, and I felt my body vibrating. And I could hear these voices above me telling me to come out. And some of the voices were saying that I was ready. There was one adamant voice that said I wasn't ready, and they were going back and forth between themselves of whether I was ready or not. And I'm sitting there like, I think I'm ready. And I'm trying to emerge out of my body, and I just couldn't do it. And that's when I woke up, and I was like, wow, I think I just almost astral projected. It's an amazing thing. And then, after that, that's when I really felt that moment in time was my real awakening. And even like as, during the process of getting divorced and everything, I would get messages from my spirit guides that would tell me, you're only meant to be here for a certain amount of time. You're only meant to be here to help her prepare for her next stage. So, I don't really feel too bad about the whole thing, really, because it was just a learning process. And I think that's what a lot of people have to learn, whether it's between divorces or deaths or losing a job or whatnot, is that it's all a learning process.
Right. We're going to have to take a break here. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We're talking with Jim Byers. He's a psychic medium. His website is psychicmediuminpa.com. And the book we were talking about earlier is called My American Odyssey. It's available on Amazon, or you can go to the Beyond Reality Radio website and click on the guest tab, and there'll be a link there as well for the book and for information about Jim. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Jason Hawes, J.V. Johnson. Thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. We also thank all the great radio stations across the country that are carrying the program, that are part of the Beyond Reality Radio group and family. And we like adding to those to that list every week. So stay tuned, and maybe a station in your area will pick up the show as well. We're talking with Jim Byers. He's a psychic medium. His website is psychicmediuminpa.com. And Jim, again, thanks for joining us. We've got a little bit of time left here, but I wanted to move the conversation to a couple of questions I have. You use the word psychometry. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Tell us what that is.
That's reading objects, basically, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where this book really started from, like we talked about earlier. And for me, I really enjoy reading objects because it's a stronger connection. There's a lot of energy related to these objects. If you think about it, when someone makes an appointment with me, I say to them, you're welcome to bring an object. And what I usually tell them to bring is, maybe like a piece of jewelry, like a watch. You think about a watch or someone's favorite necklace they've worn these years and years and years after another, and their energy is absorbed into that. And I can read those objects and get even a stronger connection and more information on them, more personable information sometimes, because there's just so much more energy from that object than from what I'm picking up from the person that's across from me. And I've had people bring watches, necklaces, clothing. I had somebody walk in the one day, and they had this like 2-3 foot thing wrapped in a garbage bag. I'm like, somebody brought a gun. And it was like a really long statue, like those long 1970s black leopard statues that everybody had. So he brings that in. And I'm like, wow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to read this. It's huge, So I put this big thing on my lap, and I start reading it, and I picked up 3 or 4 different spirits connected to this. They're all his relatives, but I just kept going one right after another. And it's probably one of the best psychometry readings I did. And it was funny because 2 of the spirits I picked up on were both named Bill. So as the reader, I start to get a little confused sometimes when names are similar. Sometimes I receive my own name, and it's like, is this Jim Byers, or is this Jim related to this client? And I'm going to pass it along to them. And if it's not a Jim related to them, then that's when I have to think about myself. What is there something about me that correlates with this client or the spirit they're starting to connect with?
Now, on an object like that, why are spirits attached to it?
Well, like I said, like a watch, you wear that years and years over again. When a certain object, we take pride in these things. Some things we hold on to. If it's a set of keys, or it's a statue that we, some people hold on to these statues. If it's like a religious statue, or they just admire it and they put a lot of energy into it, and it means something to them. If it was like a trophy that they won from a bowling tournament or high school sports, this means something to them. So there's energy connected to it, and I can pick up on that. So in other words, it's more like a residual type. It's not that the real spirit. It's not that there's really a spirit there. It's just the energy from a residual is kind of like a tape player rewinding and playing itself over and over again. But the fact of the matter is, it's not that there's any intelligent type haunt. It's just that the energy from when the individual was living or when the individual passed is somehow attached to it with no intellectualness. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, you're right. I can read photos too, not as well as the objects because, with the photo, we put it in a frame, we put it on the wall, and there it sits, but I can read photos, just objects I enjoy so much more. And I do my best, depending if it's a 2-foot panther statue, I do my best not to even look at the object or look at the photo and just, take it from them and close my eyes and just read it from there.
Oh, okay.
When looking at your website, I saw something that's curious to me, and I really need to know more about this. You talk about the Akashic records. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that properly.
Well, I'm from northeastern Pennsylvania, so I say Akashic.
Okay. What is that?
I think it's Akashic. What that is it's really another name for it is the book of life. It's the book of you. And everything that you've done, are doing, and will do are already recorded in this book. And those readings are different from a psychic or a medium reading because, your grandmother's not going to come through. This is a reading specifically about you, about, your personality and things that you've done and things that you need to address right now and things that are coming. So that's when, someone wants more of a futuristic reading, I tend to push them more towards the Akashic records than a regular psychic reading.
And who and what are the maintainers of those records, and what form does this take? I mean, I know this is not a book in a library somewhere. What is it?
Well, it's the lords of the records are the spirits that maintain these records, and they maintain them, they guard them, and you kind of have to go to them and let them know, like hey, I'm coming for Jason Hawes, Akashic records. So when I come back, when Jason shows up, I'll be back for those records. I have to ask your permission to read those records. That's like going into your purse or man purse or wallet or, it's your personal information.
Just to be clear, so I don't carry a man purse. I don't think Jason does either, just to be clear. Okay.
But it's your personal information, and I can't go in and out. That's another thing, too. I can't, while you're here, I get in, and then you leave, and I go back in. That's not how it works. It's strictly for that time period. For me, what I do is I kind of go to this Parthenon. To me, it appears like an old Greek building, and that's where I go in, and it is like a library because everybody's records are there. And sometimes I see the records as a book. Sometimes I'm just given the information. I tell people to come with a couple prepared questions just because sometimes with the Akashic readings, I can just go. They sit down, we're gone. I'm reading, and I'm giving them information. Sometimes they want more of a specific question. They want to know about this instead of that. So that's why I like to have them come in with prepared questions. And the way that they ask the questions is important, too, because the lords of the records are kind of finicky, and, they don't want you to ask selfish questions, easy questions. Sometimes we already know the answers to them. They don't want you to come and say, when am I going to fall into some money? No, the question is, what do I need to do in order to become more financially stable or more financially successful? And then that's when the information I get is, maybe you need to look for a new line of work. Maybe look in this field. or maybe there's certain things that some people are spontaneous purchasers. You need to slow down on that so you can start to save. Sometimes, again, it falls back to the relationship. Who's my next boyfriend going to be? They're not going to give me the name. The question is, how do you need to prepare for your next relationship? Because, from one relationship to another, there needs to be time there for us to kind of reevaluate that too. Why did it fall apart? Was it me or was it them? Was it both of us? Do I need to become more kinder? Do I need to pay more attention to the person that I'm dating? There's all these things that sometimes we don't like to admit about ourselves. But when the information comes through, it's being told for a reason. It's because we need to address that. And if, just like I said before, if we don't address certain things, it's just going to keep repeating because people come to me, I keep getting into these bad relationships. Well, I know because you keep behaving the same way. You keep pursuing the same kind of person, whether it's the bad boy or whatever it may be. You need to start looking elsewhere. You're not going to pick them up on a Friday night at a bar. That's not going to be your soulmate.
Oh, damn.
Maybe it's sorry to disappoint you. But maybe it's related to a hobby that you do, and that's where you're going to find this person because you're like-minded. So that's the kind of information I get with the Akashic Records. And for me, from what I've learned, there's kind of like, they call it a pathway prayer, and it's just a way to kind of let the Lords of the Records know that we're coming. And there's usually when I do the Akashic Records and I do that pathway prayer, I kind of feel this energy surge where it tells me like, all right, you're in. And I just go from there.
Now, did you say that the Akashic Records has information on pretty much everybody out there?
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
everybody.
Well, a couple of
but
things. First off,
you can only get information on you.
Okay.
You can't go look at someone else's records if that's what your question was.
Oh, okay. But you said if I gave you permission, you could, correct?
I get permission to look at your records, yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, doesn't that seem a little intrusive? What kind of records do they have on everybody?
Well, it's going to be pretty much outlining your life and outlining situations, whether they're embarrassing or proud situations. They're all outlined there. So, you give me permission to look into that. And, some of that information I don't even touch on because it's not pertinent. But some things I do get to see that maybe some people might not be so proud to hear about. And you're hearing about it because, for one, please don't repeat this. And please work on that aspect of yourself. If you want to say, observers, and they just keep taking these notes.
All right, so supposedly there is like these spirit type things that are telling these people things that are going on in my life. Is that what's being said?
Yeah.
Okay, but all right. I'm confused on that because how does anybody know that it's legit? Like they could be writing anything about you at that point, but how do they know that it's legit? And how do they know and I'm not trying to put it down. Please don't think of it that way. But I mean,
I get what you're saying. It's,
you contact this person.
These are responsible, truthful beings, and they're recording this in order to help us.
Yeah, and I get that. But, I mean, how do you know? I know the site. I know that whole thing's run by Dr. Howe, I believe, Howe. But how do you know that? When you contact her or somebody contacts her, I mean, at that point, it could just, all right, well, I got to write this name up. I got to, and then they could be researching you, whether it be online or whatever, to write about history. So I don't know. I guess it's just you got to deal with it on faith, right?
Yeah, I mean, the information I'm getting is from the books and from the Lords of the Records. There's no online source.
Is this in any way a religious type thing? I mean, can it be viewed?
No.
Can it be viewed that way though? I mean, spiritual, I guess, is the better way to define it. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it's more of a spiritual thing, and I guess the best way to describe it is just there's these observers who just take these notes and keep adding on to it. Pretty much like someone takes minutes during a meeting. It's kind of one of those things where they just keep adding on to these books and recording our lives.
All right, I want to change the subject quickly here. We don't have a whole lot of time left. I want to talk about chakras because more and more they seem to are becoming the focal point of a lot of psychics' work, and a lot of people are talking about it. What is your interpretation or understanding of what chakras are?
Well, for me, with the chakras, we have many. I just concentrate on the main 7 chakras. and that's going to be the root, the sacral, the solar, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. I include the ears on myself just because it's about hearing information better. But with the chakras, they're all related to certain aspects of our lives. Like the root chakra is related to grounding in our family life and our home life and our work and our jobs and finances. So, like if I see the color red, the first thing I think of is it's related to someone's root chakra. So there's an issue there with the root chakra. Sometimes it's either someone's being complimented on the fact that they are maybe a financially responsible person, or it's being brought up because this person isn't financially responsible, or there's trouble at home, and that's why this is being brought up. Another thing with the locations of chakras is sometimes there may be a medical issue in that area, and I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe medicines, and I don't tell people that they have diseases. Okay, but when I feel that there's an issue, a medical issue in that area, I can only tell them, to make an appointment with the doctor. I mean, you walk in there and you pay the deductible, and you find out usually that there's nothing wrong. I mean, I'm a hypochondriac sometimes, so I just show up and I find out that I'm just stop looking at the internet.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? We all self-diagnose on the internet, and we all have everything now.
Yeah, I'm dying like every other month. But so when I feel that there's an issue with someone in a certain area related to a chakra, I just say, hey, you may want to check into that area. Just go to the doctor. Either you're fine, or maybe you find something early on, and it's it can be taken care of. Because the worst thing is to tell somebody, hey, I think you got cancer. Then they're walking out of here going crazy. You just gave them a life sentence. You can't, as a reader, you can't do something like that. So just telling them to go to the doctor, I think, covers it and helps them get the help that they may need, whether it's physically or the emotional calm of knowing that you're fine.
Have you ever had somebody come back after you gave them that reading and that advice, and they said, thank God, Jim, I went to the doctor, they found this, and we got it in time, so thank you? I mean, has it ever been that personal for you?
Well, I've had people during my readings where I've pointed out a certain part of their body and said, I really feel that you need to get this checked out. And, it's kind of one of those things where I think people treat their bodies like they treat their cars, where they don't take it to the mechanic until it breaks down. Sometimes we don't go to the doctor until we break down. And there's been times when I get information where I see a color, which sends me to a chakra, and I say, I feel like you're having abdominal issues. And they're like, yeah, it's not getting any better. I'm like, please, I encourage you to please go to the doctor. And they go, and they find out that maybe there's something very minor, and the irritation's gone. Sometimes I'll get something. I've gotten sensations in my elbow where someone has an issue, and something they've been letting go for a long time, and they go get it taken care of. I've had sometimes acupuncture is taboo, and I've had it done myself, and I swear by it. I think it's fantastic. I get these headaches, and I argue with my doctor whether it's migraines or a seasonal sinus thing, and I don't go to him anymore. I go to the acupuncturist, and I get it. I go to 2 or 3 visits, and it's gone.
Jim,
so I think
final question here, and then we're gonna have to let you go here. But we ask this of every psychic: why can't we get winning lottery numbers?
Because the money's supposed to come to us when it comes, and we're supposed to work for it. Nothing is free. Trust me.
But if I had gone and bought a ticket, I would have worked.
You need a ticket first.
I have to say that once in a while I go down to the Mohegan Casino down here by me, and I play the ponies. And once in a while I do okay. Sometimes I'll go there and I'll feel like, I need to put on this number, and then I look at the program like, that horse is terrible, and I put it somewhere else, and I should have went with my gut.
You got a Mohegan Suns out there?
Yeah, down in Wilkes-Barre. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We got one right across the border from me in Connecticut, so awesome.
Yeah, I've heard about that one. Yeah, this one, we have the horses and we have the casino, and I'll go once in a while. It's not so bad, but
that's where JV and I go and hang out with Meatloaf.
Yeah. Well, I notice, sometimes I've gone. I'm like, I'll say to my straight guys, hey, let me just get 1 or 2, and I won't. But then when I come home, I have 2, 3 appointments in my email waiting for me. So, they would rather me earn the money than be given the money.
That makes sense. Probably a better way to get it anyway. We've been talking with Jim Byers, Psychic Medium. The website is psychicmediuminpa.com. The book is My American Odyssey. Anything else you want to direct people to, Jim?
No, those two websites, you can buy the book that way. And I really appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I really encourage people to don't buy the book because I'm asking you. Buy the book because you want to read about a soldier's life. And this is, a standpoint. My grandfather was a wireman. He wasn't a hero or anything, but he did, endure some personal battles and, battles on the field as well. And, like you said, every soldier is important, whether it's a cook or a truck driver or a wireman or infantryman, and every one of them has a story. And my whole goal of this book was not only to, preserve this for my family, but hopefully encourage someone to speak with a veteran in their lives, because I think we would learn more about, why is Grandpa a little bit, maybe why is he so quiet, or why doesn't he do this or do that? And you learn that it's rooted somehow in the service, and you learn more about them. And, it'd be a pity for people to pass up on that opportunity, because I never got that chance. I had to work backwards.
Thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with us, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future. All
right, we've been talking with Jim Byers, Psychic Medium. Again, the website, psychicmediuminpa.com. It's Jason and JV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back to wrap things up. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Beyond Reality Radio is produced by Slick Eddie Edwards and co-produced by Alexandria Johnson for Entercom Radio. Don't forget to stop by our Facebook page, give us a like, and say hello. It's Beyond Reality Radio, all one word. If you've got information you want us to follow up on, or you'd like to be a guest on Beyond Reality Radio, email to Slick Eddie. That's Slick Eddie, ED.